We lost Grandpa. It was my fault. I didn't lock the dog door. Now Grandpa is gone and I am so scared. Mom won't let me call the cops. She says they'll only make things worse. Worse for who? I'd like to know. Anyone who meets him is going to think he's just a confused old man. He's my grandpa. He's her dad. He loves us. I doubt anyone else is going to get that leeway. He's small. He's wiry. And he's stronger than he looks. He's surprisingly spry for a man his age. I know he can fit into all kinds of closed, tight spaces. He could be anywhere, at any time, and he's getting hungrier. I don't know what's wrong with him. He's always been this way, as long as I can remember. When I was really little, he lived with my grandma on a farm out in the country. But then Grandma passed and he came to live with us. Dad left 6 months later. I understand. It must have been hard to adjust to. I was only 6. It was weird that Mom saved the cuticle clippings and pedicure shavings from the salon she worked at, but not that weird. My buddy Danny's mom kept all his baby teeth in a jar. The neighbor girl, Anne, her mom kept her umbilical cord and had it framed. I never saw what she did with them. Only that she'd give them to Grandpa right when she got home and asked him to make them last a little while. Then she'd go and make us dinner and Grandpa would go back to his room. Other than that, he was an absolutely normal grandfather to me. He'd watch me while Mom was at work, telling me stories and teaching me all the little adult things I'd eventually need to know. How to do the laundry or fix a crooked cabinet, sew a button on or change a tire. Things changed as I got older though. I remember the day I walked in on him eating Grandma's ashes. I was 11 at the time and he'd been losing weight for a while. By that point, he had the sun-dried beef jerky look some people get after spending years working outside in the elements. Thin and raw, with hands and fingernails that always seemed dirty or stained, like a smoker's did. Except he never smoked as far as I knew. I came home from school early with a fever and there he was, shoulder pressed into the mantel, greedily shoving palmfuls of ashes into his mouth. We made eye contact across the room. There was no way for him to hide what he was doing. There was a white-gray ring all around his mouth. We both stared for a long time. He licked some of the ashes off the corner of his mouth and sighed. "Sorry, son. I just got so hungry. What your ma brings home just ain't doing it anymore." I struggled with it at first, but then I thought, well, it isn't hurting anyone. Grandma wouldn't have cared. I figured. She was dead. According to Mom and Grandpa and everyone else I spoke to, she was already in heaven. The ashes weren't even the important part. It was the urn that reminded us who she'd been and how we'd loved her. I put my backpack down and shut the door. "It's okay, Grandpa," I said after a heavy beat of silence. "The nurse sent me home. I've got a fever." "Aw, that's no good." He seemed relieved. He put the lid back on the urn and wiped his mouth on the back of his sleeve, gesturing towards the kitchen. "Let's get some soup and medicine in you." And that was that. Mom came to sit at the end of my bed when she got home from work. She touched my foot, waking me gently. I gone to bed early. Grandpa insisted. I can still remember the smell of her perfume. She was a warm amber silhouette with the bathroom light behind her. Across the hall. "Hey babe." She leaned over to check my temperature. "Grandpa told me you have a fever today." I was 11. Not too old to want my mom to fuss over me when I was feeling cruddy. "Seems to have gone down. That's good," she murmured. I nodded sleepily as she pushed my bangs back from my sweaty brow. "How about you stay home tomorrow? The rest will do you good." "Okay," I murmured. I was 11 after all. I wasn't about to say no to a day off, especially if it meant a longer weekend. "Do you want to talk about anything else?" she asked after a while. I didn't even know what she meant at first. I'd already pushed the thing with my grandma's ashes to the back of my mind. "Does it have to be people?" I asked eventually. "Yeah, baby, unfortunately," she sighed. "Why don't we have to?" I questioned as she tucked the blankets around my chin. "I don't know, honey. I think it has to do with the war. Grandpa doesn't like to talk about it. Do me a favor and don't bug him too much about it, okay?" Mom leaned down to kiss my forehead. I was already 9/10 asleep, but I nodded anyway. "Love you, baby," she whispered. After that, I was in on the secret. There wasn't much I could do to help as a child but plan for the future. Mom wouldn't be able to work in the nail salon forever. After all, Grandpa was getting hungrier all the time. By the time I was in high school, Mom was working 2 jobs. One at the nail salon and one at the hospital doing night cleaning. She said it was to save up for me to go to college, but we all knew the truth. Grandpa hated it. I think he would have gone to work at the hospital instead of her if he could have. But he told me once that it was too much temptation. I didn't ask what that meant. I wish I would have. I got myself apprenticed to a mortician when I was 16. That helped for a while. My boss worked for the state, taking care of the unclaimed and unidentified remains. There were a lot more than I anticipated. It wasn't hard to just skim some off the top. Take a little home to Grandpa. That let Mom quit her second job, which was nice. We didn't have to worry so much about Grandpa's appetite. He was grateful. He told me so every time I brought him something home. "Thanks, son. It was really gnawing at me today," he would say, but it was never enough for long. He wouldn't ask for more. No, not ever. He didn't want to jeopardize my job or lean on me too hard. "I was still just a kid," he'd say, as he started locking himself in the basement overnight. He started getting thinner, so I started bringing more home. By the time I graduated from my apprenticeship, I was taking whole boxes of ashes weekly, and then bi-weekly, and then every other night. He was grateful for the ashes, but they weren't as good as the fresh stuff. The fresh stuff carried him longer, so I started bringing home trimmings. Strips and slivers where I could get away with it. It wasn't easy. People don't notice organs missing, but skin was harder to hide. And it had to be skin. I don't know why, but it had to be skin. Bones and organs and flesh wouldn't do. I got most of it from cremation prep, but then I had a whole nother problem. Smuggling it out. I used to sneak it in a thermos. That worked pretty well for a while, but Grandpa kept getting hungrier. It's gotten to the point where nothing I bring him seems to satiate him for long. He's gotten so thin that I can see his rib cage. He was still coherent enough to carry a conversation, but he started asking us to make sure all the doors were locked just in case he got out of the basement at some point. It finally happened. Last week, I got sloppy. I forgot to lock the doggy door after Bruce came back in. I didn't realize what I'd done until I went down to give Grandpa his ration and found the basement door half cracked, the chain only partially intact. Grandpa's gone. Mom won't let me call the cops. She's scared they'll hurt him. I'm scared he'll hurt someone else. The skin has to be dead, you see. Shout out to my superfans, Sweet Black Swan, Casey, and Brooklyn. I really appreciate you guys supporting my channel, and I really look forward to making more content for everyone.